Happy sunny Saturday. I hope you will excuse my sleevelessness. It was just too gorgeous of a day. There was way too much sunshine to take advantage of in order to wear sleeves today, so apologies for being a little bit casual today. So the song today goes out to Esther. This was her request. It's her favorite hymn, and the song is "It Is Well With My Soul." Pretty much everybody knows this song, and I think the story behind it is actually pretty well known as well. So its writer, Horatio Spafford, was, I believe, an attorney in the Chicago area, and he had already been kind of going through a string of rough things, a lot of disappointments, some discouragements, I think the loss of his son to illness. And then he and the family decide, you know what, they're going to take a voyage across the Atlantic, they're going to go abroad, just kind of chill out for a little bit. And because of some business, he's detained and has to stay behind, sends his wife and 4 daughters on the ship without him, and the tragedy happens at sea. 2 boats collide, and 4 of his daughters tragically, all 4 of his daughters tragically are lost. His wife alone remains, and she sends word to him as soon as she arrives on the other side of the ocean. And the legend has it that as he was crossing the Atlantic to get to where his wife was, as he went past that area where that wreck had happened, he wrote these words, this very famous hymn. So I have to say, for me personally, I kind of have this love-hate relationship with this song. I do truly love the song, "It Is Well With My Soul." I love the strong faith that's exhibited through it. It's very reminiscent of that contentment that Paul writes about in Philippians chapter 4, verses 11 through 13. And he says, "For I have learned in whatever situation I am to be content. I know how to be brought low, and I know how to abound. In any and every circumstance, I have learned the secret to facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." And so this song really is kind of talking about that whatever is happening, it is well with my soul. And my favorite memory of this song was at a Women of Joy conference with my friends, and there was this quiet moment, and they had, I think there were over 4,000 women there that year. It's been even more since then, but in this particular instance, I think it was around 4,000 of us all singing this song a cappella at that moment. And you could just, it was this serene and surreal and chill-inducing, actually. And it was this quiet surrender of all of these souls across the floor in this conference, or in this big area. And just thousands of worries just being cast aside and replaced with the peace of God. So just really amazing experience. But I also know that for me, that kind of faith seems very far out of reach, especially when in those times of really suffering greatly. And so this song really then serves as a reminder of just how I clearly don't trust God the way that I should, and just how far I still have to go to get to that point where I can be content in all circumstances. I mean, I am naturally disinclined to contentment, and my mother would certainly attest to that, as she used to always say, "You just need to learn to be content." And I'm learning, Mom. I'm learning slowly, and God is helping. But it's a process. And so this song kind of reminds me that if I'm being honest, I'm not there yet. And I have to say that, like, when I was going through the darkest of my times, I felt like such a failure because I couldn't get it together. I didn't have this serene peace about whatever was going on in life. And I felt that made me a poor excuse for a Christian. And I tried to play that sort of suffering strong card, you know, the suffering saint. And you'll always hear these stories about, you know, oh, sister so-and-so is going through this terrible thing, but man, she's just got this inner peace. And it's like, well, I am not sister so-and-so. I'm over there on my bed. I can barely get out of bed all week long. I'm the one who's invited to a weekend getaway with all my friends, and in the midst of all of these things that were going on, spent the entire weekend in tears, just ruining everybody else's fun. And so, but I think even then, you know, as it was in these despairing times, you know, I can look back and say, you know, at that time I felt like a failure. I felt like an abject failure because I was putting that reliance on my ability to cope with whatever was going on, and kind of missed Christ in that equation, and that going back to what Paul said, that I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. And now I can look back on that and say, actually there is a woman who was trying to trust the Lord, and she knew that she needed to, and she was really trying, and she was learning, right? And that's really what's happening. Those of us who don't suffer quite so well, every time we have these disappointments in life, God is teaching us how to suffer, and He's teaching us lessons that are preparing us for the next time that we'll have another round of disappointments, because unfortunately life has a lot of disappointments to it, and things happen, and people we love will pass away, and we don't always get what we want, right? And that skill is a little bit harder to come by. That coping skill is a little bit harder for some of us, but God teaches us that, and it's a process, and it can take a very, very long time, like it has in my case for sure. And I really do think that when we think of, and we put that Christian on the pedestal and say, oh, that person is just, they're just so strong, and their faith's so strong, and that's great, and that's wonderful. But we're not also supposed to be stoics that, just stiff upper lip to everything. That's really a cultural hangover from a different time and a different place. And, did Jesus endure the cross with a stiff upper lip? He endured the cross with humble submission to the will of God. But He cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me? And He was in anguish in the garden. And so I think that, as we suffer on this earth, and as we suffer as Christ suffered, that there's permission there that to cry out to God and to say, this is terrible. I don't like this. And that's okay. And then He comes along and He gives us that peace, and He helps us with that surrender. So I really think of this song really more as like an aspiration for the Christian, because I think that there's probably more of us who are not quite there at that point yet than would care to admit. And so it's not really the reality for every Christian right now, but that's okay. Because again, going back to Philippians, which is just a wonderful book, one of my favorites, Philippians 1:6 promises that He who began a good work in us will see it through to completion. And as we walk with Him, and He's teaching us these things continually. And so it's really, when I sing this song, I'm singing it as a prayer, saying, God, can you help me get to that point? Can you give me the grace to get to that point, to fully trust You, and to fully just surrender in contentment and in peace with You and Your will and what You have for this moment. But I don't want to leave just there. There's so much to say about the song, obviously, and I know I've already gone too long, but the real theological meat of the song is really in the second verse. And the reason why we can have this peace with God is because of the sacrifice of Christ. And that second verse saying that, my sin, not in part, but in whole, is nailed to the cross, and I bear it no more. Praise the Lord, oh my soul. So, again, keeping in mind that we can have that peace, we can have that relationship with God, but only because of the sacrifice and what Christ did for us on the cross. struggling here.
It is